Next up and last up, but definitely not least up, we have Michael Strautmanis, who is joining us as the Chief Engagement Officer of the Obama Foundation. And in his role, he oversees community affairs and strategic partnerships, engages with local Chicagoans on plans for the Obama Presidential Center and the foundation's mission to inspire, empower, and connect people to be able to change the world. Before joining the Obama Foundation, he spent over a decade in Washington, D.C., including 4 years as a part of President Obama's administration. Lord, we miss Obama. Okay, I'm not going to go off on that. He also partnered with a diverse group of leaders to help address and increase access to economic opportunity, strengthen our judicial system, and champion equity and inclusion in the White House. We need that. Let's give it up for Michael.
Hey, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. We're safe and sound. I'm blessed. Although I have to say, I walked into this whole thing struggling just to deal with my emotions around what I see out there, and now you got me all fired up. So
good.
Let's do this.
Okay, good. That's my job, and I'm glad I could make that happen for you. And I'm fired up that you're here joining us today. So listen, Michael, the Obama Foundation has focused so much on young people and ensuring that boys and young men of color, in particular, have the opportunity to live full and abundant lives. So talk with us a little bit about how COVID is impacting the ability of Black communities to live full and dignified lives. And specifically, let's talk about the young men and boys that you're working with.
Yeah, it was a challenge. And I think that one of the reasons why President Obama had the Obama Foundation focus on this is that it's a continuation of something that's been important to him all his life. When Trayvon Martin was killed, and all those incidents happened during the time when he was president, he brought together the entire government and foundations and partners across the country to focus in on boys and young men of color. And so he left the White House and started the Obama Foundation. He knew that was something that the organization was going to continue to focus on. And I think what we've seen are a couple things. One, all the challenges that our boys and young men were facing before this all happened, of course, are coming into play here. And I think we need to stop treating them and viewing them and seeing them as victims. They have not only as threats, but also just as victims, the brilliance, the intelligence, the solutions that they're engaging in right now. That's something that we see. We see them looking out for each other. We see them engaging in mutual aid to come together with one another. There's a young man in Chicago named Jamal Cole, who's getting people from across the city who don't usually come to the South Side to come and do, young people to come and do checks on seniors, wellness checks to make sure everybody's okay. These boys and men in these communities are passing out a protective personal protective equipment to make sure that their communities stay safe. And so what we're looking for is investing in them, investing in their solutions, and investing in their power. And I don't see that only in Chicago. We see that across the country and around the world. And we also want to make sure that everything that we see in our criminal justice system and other structures of power that see these young men as threats, we need to call that out. We need to, I love the conversation we had earlier about the criminal justice system. We need to make sure that that these boys and young men are not victimized further because of the fear that we see right now building in our communities. And so we're focused on it. We see a lot of energy around it. But I have to say, I also see a lot of hope because they're solving problems, they're bringing solutions, they're organizing. And so I'm willing to bet on them.
I heard that. Well, we all know, right, that Black people are survivors of a country that has tried to kill us over and over again. So shout out to Black boys and Black men who are continuing to step up, and shout out to our communities who are continuing to survive, right, and be resilient in the face of all kinds of madness. We're not new to this. We true to this. Okay.
I've been Black a long time. That's what I said, right?
So here's the deal. Speaking of Black communities being powerful, civic engagement and public engagement are really a huge part of the work that you all are doing at the Obama Foundation. So talk with us a little bit about what solidarity and power building looks like in your work, especially during this pandemic.
Yeah, well, I looked at the site where the Obama Presidential Center is going to be built. And one of the things that we see in our community, and I know you know the South Side, I know you know Chicago well, is that it's just been underinvested in decades. And so what we see and the challenges is there's no surprise to it, right? This is not an accident. And President and Mrs. Obama decided that, they could bring the sort of power of the former presidency. One of the things that you get to do is you get to create this presidential library. Mm-hmm. And so rather than create something, and I would love to come, sit in a replica of Obama's Oval Office and take a look at Mrs. Obama's dresses and see the basketballs and all that stuff. But what they decided is that they can use that in order to create an economic engine, and in order to create something that's going to invest resources in a community that's been underinvested in for generations. And so part of what we're doing at the Presidential Center starts on the South Side of Chicago. But what we also see, we also spend a lot of time on is leadership development programs. Our mission is to inspire, empower, and connect people to change their world. And what we've seen around the world, around the country, and in Chicago is there are so many people, right, who are leaders who aren't defined by leaders. And we want to define leaders by what you do rather than what title that you hold. And as we get those folks engaged, we want to give them the tools, right? Because as you know, there's an effective way to organize. There's an effective way to use data. There's an effective way to manage the team that you have. So we want to make sure these leaders have the tools to be effective. And then finally, we want to connect them. And I think, as you can imagine, and you just talked about this pandemic creates a real challenge around the connection that's important for power building. The whole point is that you can do more together than you can apart. And we already saw people who were in countries next to each other, in neighborhoods next to each other, and even in blocks next to each other, who weren't connected with one another, who were struggling to get the same thing done individually. And so we want to connect them. But obviously, we're all sitting somewhere. So many people actually have, access to virtual access with one another. So we want to lean into that and make those connections. And we see that that's happening all the time. And I think that gives us an opportunity to make these connections across cultures, across regions, across oceans, and across things that divide us, so that the solidarity and power building can be real. The last thing I'll say on this is, this is going to require us to focus. I think a lot of times what I see, and I know you've seen this before as well, is sometimes we get divided around tactics, even if we share the same values and the same goals. And I think this is a time where there's going to be there's a choice that's being made. That choice is between division or solidarity.
Look, we all need a little bit of inspiration right now. And I know that when we talk about young people, we often talk about how young people are the future. And I reject that. I'm like, no. Young people are right now, today, reshaping everything we know about how to get it done and how to make it happen. So talk with us a little bit about what you're seeing. Give us some advice as adults on what we can be doing to better support young people being in their power and exercising their power, so that we can finally get to this world that we all really not only long for, but deserve. Yeah.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And I will tell you, you just get President and Mrs. Obama. And there are very few people who have many choices as they do as to where they invest their time, money, and resources. They're investing it in young people. So they're making that bet. and they're making that choice based on what they see and where the opportunity lies. So the first thing is say, and I know I work for them, but I'll follow their lead. The second thing I'd say is, I'm a history buff. I love reading history, and what I've seen is that in every major historical moment, challenge and change, it's created the opportunity for young people to emerge and lead. And I know this is going to sound corny, but I believe in it so deeply. I just go to the Montgomery bus boycott, and the fact that there was Dr. King was a young preacher, and there is no community in the Black Christian religious evangelical community that can be hierarchical, and you have to respect your elders and respect the seniors, right? But in that tremendous change and disruption, there is an opportunity for him as a young leader to step forward and chart a new course, and make a tremendous change and create direction. And so I would just say to adults, let them lead, follow the thing that we hear all the time, nothing about us without us. Let the young people participate in the leadership position. That's going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to have to learn new ways to use my iPhone with them involved in. They're going to have to teach me how to do IG Live and all this other kind of stuff. TikTok, whatever, fine. Let them lead, and let them create power and coalition among themselves, to allow us to create a structural change in the new path.
I love that. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. This is incredible. And so for those of you who are watching right now, we are in crisis, but we are not defeated, my friends. In crisis is where some of the best innovation and creativity comes from. When you're backed up against a wall, that's when you really learn how to fight. So my love and my word to everybody who's watching right now is keep fighting, keep loving, keep building, keep dreaming, and let's win. Peace out, y'all.